Welcome back to another episode of Boomer Bust, the flagship show for the channel. Actually, the 100th episode, believe it or not. Fun times. And a interesting one to talk about. So we're going to talk about the pass catchers for the 23 NFL draft, aka the wide receivers and tight ends. And a very interesting group, to say the least. So I've said this many times, and I'm gonna go into it now about different positions when I talk about dime a dozen. And it might seem a little counterintuitive when you're talking about these two groups, mostly because of the receivers. We see kind of, I think some people might consider a boom right now of receivers, or at least numbers. Now we know that coincides with more passing attempts and all those different things. So that's there too. But we do have just a more wide open offense. And because of that, and I said this a long time ago, once the offense started to open up and we moved away from the strict West Coast principles that kind of swept the NFL and was there for decades, where we're attacking certain, intermediate areas, and we became a more open offense. Then you started to see more receivers, different types of receivers become more prevalent, because before it was always about the same thing, between like 5'11" and 6'1" is what they wanted, and this type of build and speed, whatever. And that's what it was as a perimeter receiver. The whole slot receiver wasn't a big thing. We get introduced to the spread, that becomes more prevalent, and now we're in a place where we have this horizontal offense that I talk about a lot. And really, you had the Houston Texans back in the day with Andre Johnson running a little bit of this. I wouldn't say a little bit, but they had an offense that was similar, that was kind of really built on these crossing routes, and that's not something that a lot of teams did. And now you see it all the time. Some teams more than others, but for the most part, especially when you have the Shanahan quote unquote zone play action influenced offense, you see a lot of that. Obviously, with I'd have a lot of Bears fans. It's not a Bears show, but obviously, if you're a Bears fan, you saw it a lot this year. Just and I said a few years ago, I seen it come into college where more quarterbacks were getting under center, but they were only getting under center to do a play action boot every time. And so we see a lot of that because people want to get that kind of levels going, where you got the flat, the intermediate, something a little deep. Rarely do they go to the deep. But anyway, so with that, you get receivers getting a lot better opportunities. Not just the slot. We got guys like Scary Terry. We got guys, and they just got Dotson, who's very similar to him. But we have guys like that. Robert Woods was like that for a long time, but obviously they never had this type of offense to fully utilize him. And then he got to the Rams and was able to really unlock it. So, uh, essentially you get guys with a lot of lateral quickness being a bigger impact. So no longer do you have to be the prototype build. No longer do you have to be the Randy Moss or Megatron jumping over people. You could be a lot of different things and still be effective. Like most things, you have to get into the right system. And so running backs became dime a dozen because you can really it comes down just to the athletic ability. And then you get behind a good offensive line and you can be effective. I'm not saying you're going to be an all pro. There's definitely a level of mental ability there too, but for the most part, we can rotate these guys and start getting, 4 to 5 yards if we're blocking correctly. And we don't necessarily need a top 5 pick to do that. And, again, we have the Saquons of the world, and some people will say that they still find a little more value in that. And yes, they're good players, but like this year, we'll see where Robinson from Texas goes. But people are like, that's a top 5 prospect, but that's just not what the value is for his position. So anyway, we know they're dime a dozen. And then the receivers and tight ends follow that trend because it is about the supporting cast. Like I said, we opened up the offense, and now you get the right person in the right spot. They're going to be able to go. Like Travis Kelce, obviously has shown some incredible stuff, and he has a high level IQ. But at the same time, you look at him, you look at a lot of prolific receivers. For the most part, there's some that I think are elite status that just kind of win on their own. But for the most part, these are people that are playing within a good supporting cast and a lot of times feasting against open stuff. Justin Jefferson, even though he's a great route runner, not saying he can't do man coverage, but he was feasting on zone coverage this year and blown assignments, especially early in the year. So, again, you look at these prospects coming out this year and any year, and while they might not be the top or they might not have elite measurables, there's room for them to be impactful, and then as I keep saying, you get that impact, you get some confidence, then you roll. You watch Christian Watson this year, one catch for a touchdown, completely started to change his attitude. The man is on a different path. So that's all it's about. You find the right talent. Hopefully you pick someone that fits into the plan you have. You get them going and successful. They have confidence, and then they start to build their game. But it doesn't always happen that way. So there's definitely going to be people in here that don't get to the right situation and probably never get on or get on later in their life. So anyway, with that being said, I mean, overall, the summary is a weak receiver class. Weak might be a little stronger word. Definitely a lower tier receiver class than usual. And then a very strong, I would even say great, excellent tight end class. This tight end class is, wow. I mean, really stellar. So we can start with the receivers. And these are kind of, I would say, quick. Like, you know what it is. Quentin Johnston to me is the number one receiver. I've seen talk about different people, and to be honest with you, everybody else, maybe besides one person, is kind of a projection. And Quentin Johnston to an extent is a projection because he only had one full season as a starter. But this year he really lit it up. But when you talk about overall ability, size, first of all, 6'4", 215. That's going to be one of the bigger receivers out there. And then his ability with the ball in his hand is what really stands out. His ability to move his feet laterally, his vision. He runs like a running back. You think about Debo, you think about AJ Brown, some of those guys, and you have some of those rare, because as a receiver, just because you got speed or quickness doesn't always mean you in the open field you know how to run the ball. And some of these other receivers show that, but Quentin can do that. And then he has great ball skills. I mean, his arms. I'm guessing his arms are going to measure in really long, because you look at his arms, they look kind of like basketball arms, like they hang past his knees. So in addition to being 6'4", I think he's going to have incredibly long arms. So when you're talking about a catch radius, when you're talking about going up and get the ball, and he's shown that on film, I don't know the extent to his explosion. So we'll see once he tests, but on film, we at least seen that ability. Now, the thing with him, the big thing, well, two big things. Number one is his route running. He just, for whatever reason, they didn't really challenge him at the line, maybe because they didn't think he would be that fast. And I don't think he has top end speed, but he has good speed, especially as a strider. He'll build it up. But maybe they didn't respect the speed, so they didn't try him. And he's big, so maybe that's why I didn't do it. But the league, he's going to get some press, and he's going to get jammed, so we got to see how he can get off the line. And then on top of that, he just didn't get much separation. Not really ever. And so he was winning with his ability to attack the ball and everything like that, or of course wide open passes. And there's ways to get him the ball again. You got a guy that fat, and honestly, they didn't use him at all like Treylon Burks last year, but kind of reminds me of him. Like, you get him on a jet screen or a reverse or whatever, I think he'll definitely pick up some yards. But we got to see, because in the league, you can't beat man coverage. Like I said this during the season. If you're an NFL veteran receiver and you can't beat one-on-one man coverage against an average corner, you're not trying, because the way that receivers have been working and changed their mindset on routes, these guys are improving significantly. And I talked about Jefferson, one of those guys that really went out and got his route running together. So that's going to be a big thing. And then the other thing with Johnston is his inconsistency with his hands. He body catches a lot, so tells you he's not a natural hand catcher. And some people will see like some, really difficult catches and say, oh, they have great hands. That's not always the case. The consistency matters. So a lot of people have some thoughts about his drops and his ability to do that. I got him. Well, I guess I should go through the numbers, but I think he'll be pretty solid. So I got him at 3.5 speed, 4 agility, 4 ball skills, 3 route running, 3.5 hands. And again, might not sound great, but you watch the tape and you see what he's able to do. And that was one of the few receivers that had games to watch. And that's just the unfortunate truth. I'm guessing more than likely because the receiver class wasn't that, hyped, that some of the guys that pull film then or pull games didn't feel inclined to pull it. But for whatever reason it is not a lot of tape out there. And if you've been following me in the community tab, most of these guys I was only able to get one game or watch the highlights. And the highlights can tell you a good amount, but you really got to watch games for consistency. So unfortunately, a lot of the evals are short, and I don't have the quantitative numbers like I do for Quinn Jefferson or Quinn Johnston, my bad. So next we got Jordan Addison out of USC. 1 year with USC. He was at Pitt before with Kenny Pickett as his receiver, and he won the Biletnikoff in 2021. So we got a lot of guys in this similar mold. 6 foot, 175. So 175 is undersized in the NFL. I mean, being under 180 in the NFL that's definitely undersized. So you'll probably look to him to add some more strength and muscle. He's got a thin frame, but this guy was all over the place. I wouldn't necessarily say like Debo, but he was everywhere. I mean, out of the backfield, off of motion, slot, outside, kind of everywhere. They used him at USC as like a, gadget player. And so I said he was an explosive yak receiver and he could be a deep threat too. Now, the big issue with him is that almost all the stuff he did at USC and a lot of stuff he did at Pitt was wide open. It was wide open. So like we talked about, blown coverage or some type of zone or whatever it was. And so they use, like I said, they use him off motion. He doesn't get jammed a lot. Wasn't really challenged at the line. So when talking about can he, get off the line, we'll have to see, especially if he plays at 175. There's going to be plenty of teams that want their big corners to come up and try him. So, but with his agility, I would think that he could get off the line, but we just haven't seen it. And then the other problem with that is the route running. Like I said, you watch these games and a lot of times he's not really running a traditional route because he's not really running against anybody. Like I say, he's coming out of the slot, out of the backfield, off motion. And so a lot of it is just like yak. It's just like get him the ball, kind of like an extended running back. And so what is going to be his ability to actually run routes and be in the passing game? Now, there's a few plays, few reps where I saw him run some strong routes. Now, they weren't against top competition, but also it's only a few plays. I have to see more than that to really solidify it. It reminds me a little bit, again, not strongly, but a little bit of Debo. Debo coming out just completely was like an extended running back, pretty much. And so it's no shock to see what he's doing now that he's kind of successful. But that's pretty much in college. He was not a route runner. He was not getting separation. And so, for, early on, it was like, okay, Debo's just kind of there, but then they had to start using him to his strengths. And Jordan, I mean, he could be that and be effective, but I think to be, much better than that, we got to see what type of receiver he is. Because if I'm just drafting you and I don't know that you give me like real ability as a receiver, then I can't spend a premium pick on you in my mind. So, a couple question marks, man. It's just a lot of things I didn't really have to see, so I don't really know. So, like, hands is hard to say. Route running is hard to say, and agility, because he, as much as he's an explosive yak receiver, he really won with speed. I didn't see a lot of creativity in the open field. Didn't see any broken tackles. It was just like run past them, and then once I get hit, I go down. And so there's definitely some questions. I know some people put Jordan Addison up there, but I went back and watched the Pitt stuff too, and it was very similar. So I'm curious as to what he can do as a true receiver. And then we got Jalen Hyatt, and didn't really have games, but and then Hooker had games, so I was able to watch based off that. This guy's kind of a one-trick pony. He's pure speed. Depending on what he runs, he'll definitely get a boost. I thought his acceleration was above average. I didn't think it was like excellent. It wasn't like instant gas, as we say, off the line. He kind of labors a little bit off the line, but once he goes, he goes. He's got real long legs and he strides. But yeah, like I said, depending on what he runs, he'll definitely get that boost. But just watching it, not a lot of yak, like similar to Addison, just running with speed. He blocked better than I thought. Like he was not afraid to get in there. Not nasty or anything, but he definitely didn't run away from blocks. So I appreciated that. Again, deep threat receiver, wasn't really pressed at the line. No one challenged him. Played in the slot a lot as well. So wondering what's his ability to get off the press off the line. We'll have to see. And then, yeah, just not a lot of contested balls necessarily. Definitely tracks the ball well. And he has he's 6 feet, but he's got long arms, and I think he'll have a good radius. But what's his ability, especially at 185, to get contested catches? So, and his route tree just wasn't that complex. So I think he has some natural hands. They were pretty nice. Again, the speed is good. I'm still not sure exactly what his agility is. I don't necessarily think his hips are stiff, but I think he moves well, but I don't know how quick he is in a small space. So you're talking about just like almost like a gazelle, just gliding down the field, stretching the zone, or hopefully getting past the defense. And he won the Biletnikoff this year. They definitely were getting him the ball. But yeah, again, you just watch it, and it's a lot of question marks to that game. Even though I was able to watch a number of his games, it's still like a number of question marks as to what he can do, just because he wasn't challenged in a lot of those ways. And so it's always tough because we get these receivers every single year. Not every single year, but a lot of times we see speed receivers that's their calling card, and they get to the league and they're fast still, but that doesn't really mean that it translates to them being a big time receiver. Rashid Rice, I only was able to watch one actual game, and I'm very interested. So that one game, to be honest, it wasn't overly impressive, but I did watch his highlights, and he played at SMU, not always playing against big competition, but man, very interesting prospect. So at 6'2", 203, really solid size, good wingspan. I'm sure his arms will measure in pretty decently. And just I mean, it's hard to say. Just really overall, I enjoy watching him, and I wish I could just see more games to see how consistent it is, because highlights are only going to show you the good stuff. But the way he attacks the ball, the way I think he has like excellent ball skills, tracking the ball, going up to attack the ball. His yak ability was way better than I thought watching the one game I watched. Definitely has some speed, and his 40 is going to really have people going back to watch him. And yeah, just overall, I like this game. I like this game. It wasn't much I was able to write because it was a short eval, but from what I remember just watching them, that's one of the guys I have on my radar as like a very much a sleeper pick. And I was kind of reminded of Ayuk and his transition, but I feel like there's other receivers too I probably could think of if I really thought about it. But I think again, one of those guys that not necessarily going to be talked about in the first round, but could emerge as a really good player. And that's again why I say receivers are a dime a dozen, because we're like, you look at top receivers, yes, a chunk of them are first rounders, but a lot of them aren't. And so we know that there's talent outside the first round. So then we go to Josh Downs. I mean, just great on tape. Absolutely great. I mean, pretty much exclusively in the slot. But the thing is his size. They got him at 5'10", 175. I'm pretty sure he's not 5'10". I'm pretty sure he's not. He looks more like 5'8". But that's the one knock. I mean, you talk about as a slot receiver, getting in and out of breaks, setting up his routes, catching with his hands, running with the ball after the fact, speed, agility, IQ. I mean, it's all there, but it's just his size. And that doesn't mean he can't be impactful, but it will have to wait and see when a team feels they want to go for him. Because some teams might not feel like that's the type of player that they will go for. Booty out of LSU, man, not a lot to say. Yeah, just from what I heard, I didn't. Second round, I'm gonna go back. I heard last year he was really outstanding, but that's not something I look at on the first go around. So this year, it was not impressive. And so a lot of people are talking about him, 6', 205, really good size. Again, they said that he looked way more explosive and everything last year, but this is exactly why I don't watch last year's tape, because I want to know what I'm getting right now. And typically, as I always say, if your recent tape is not as good as your old tape, either you got hurt or you regressed, and that's just really what it is. And so I'll have to go back and see. But again, like I said, the stuff I saw from this year, you could potentially see some potential there, potentially see some potential. But really, for me, it seemed like he was not giving much effort, and that's kind of a red flag to start with. Zay Flowers. Interesting. So a lot of people like Zay Flowers, and if you watch, there's a lot to like. I guess we could start with that. You're talking about a yak receiver, get the ball and go. Um, Ball skills are just outstanding. Outstanding. He's 5'10". We'll see where he measures, but for his size, ball skills are outstanding. I mean, the concentration, some of the catches he made are just, yeah, natural hands catcher, tracks the ball, great concentration. I mean, he's going to go up and attack it. Everything you like in that. I don't know what his top end speed is, but definitely in the intermediate horizontal game, catch and go. You think again like 49ers, and a lot of these guys will give you that vibe where they're yak receivers. You give them the ball on the run and they go. His agility, his start and stop, his hip movement, his fluidity is all excellent. He's a punt returner. So you love the movement skills. You love the ball skills. His route running was not there. He just did not get a lot of separation. And again, you see the highlights and you think like, oh man, he's killing people, but not really. When you watch it, he's not really beating people. He's a zone eater. And so again, it goes back to that question. And to me, that question is important in the league. It's very important. What can you do with one-on-one man coverage? Because a lot of these receivers come in and they don't know how to do it. Again, that zone, you can find holes in that, especially if the defense ain't communicating or if the quarterback extends the play. And some receivers feel like they doing something. Really, they was just wide open. And so that comes into play with Zay Flowers. So the question is, what can he do against man? Xavier Hutchinson out of Iowa State, 6'3", 210. This is our big body. I mean, I guess technically our big body receiver is Quentin Johnston, but Xavier's kind of that traditional big body. I think he's got a little bit heavier frame. Possession receiver, great catch radius. Showed the ability to go get the ball away from his frame. And I think he shields off people and uses his frame really well. The thing, I mean, with him, his routes aren't there, and his definitely don't have top end speed. So a lot of people will just sit under his routes, and so if it's not zone, we're probably gonna not see a lot from him until he developed those routes. So you're talking about a guy that is definitely a big body, typical possession receiver. I saw some people compare him to Mike Williams, not at all. Now we'll see what he does in the combine in the league, but on tape, not that nowhere near the type of basketball explosion that Mike Williams has. And to me, honestly, not a high round pick to me. Someone that's definitely more of a mid round pick that I can kind of develop. Like I said, he's Drake London light because Drake London moves way better than him. But yeah, that's just kind of what you're getting. Tank Dell, Nathaniel Dell from Houston. Interesting. A number of games, actually just a couple games, but yeah, you don't really know what the projection is. Him weighing at 165. I think I heard he did well at the Senior Bowl, and that's nice. And I wonder what he weighed there and what he'll weigh at the combine, because just right off top now, I believe he's 5'10". He's a lanky kind of person. So his arms and legs are pretty lanky. So he might be 5'10", might be a little taller, but still at 165, man, that's entirely too small in the league. So that's the first question you have. I mean, you're talking about a guy that is explosive, runs with speed and good agility, good creativity. He's a punt returner, but probably our best route runner out of the group that I've watched. And so you like that. I mean, he's a lot out of the slot, so a lot of the same things. What can he do against press? What can he do against, those big outside corners? But if you primarily use him as a slot, I mean, I think he can be effective, but it's just like how well will he hold up with that thin frame of his? So definitely teams are going to want to see him put on some more muscle. But like I said, you talk about stop and go with his routes and his patience. He's probably the best out of the group. And lastly, I got Parker Washington, who is interesting. I think ball skills are up there. And again, you don't usually see that. Like maybe, like I say, you get a Mike Williams, a big body receiver that can go up and attack the ball because they used to play basketball. But for the most part, you don't see great ball skills throughout this many prospects. But these guys, a lot of good ball skills. Not everybody's fast. Definitely not everybody's a route runner. So it's just interesting group. So Parker was mostly in the slot, possession receiver, a little bit of yak. And I think he's a tough runner, but his hips are stiff to me, a little stiff. I don't think he has that top level agility. But like I said, the ball skills for 5'10", again, we got a lot of these 5'10" receivers, attacking the ball, catching away from his body. You love all that. You love his ability to go up for contested catches, but at his size, what will he do in the league? That remains to be seen. All right, so going over to the tight ends, man, what a strong group. Now, a lot of these guys are going to be the same. So I'm going to kick it off with Luke Musgrave first. Didn't really, I mean, he played 2 games this year, I think, and then he was hurt. So didn't really get to see a lot of them, only 1 game really, and then no highlights from this year. But he's 6'6", 250. Very interesting prospect. I don't know the extent of his injury, and obviously once we get to the combine, we'll see if he's playing or not, or participating. But if he doesn't work out, it's going to be a very interesting point because some people consider him as the top tight end and think he can be a first round pick. But if he's that hurt, I don't know, he could fall. So he's going to be one of those guys where we don't know where he's slotted at. But to me, you look at if he really is hurt, like bad, and you look at these other tight ends, I mean, I think you could find a guy just as good, to be honest with you. I think, again, from the little that I saw, his size and movement ability alone is intriguing. And then his ability to go up and get the ball and all that. Definitely his frame in the blocking game it's intriguing, but if he's hurt, I think there's good options out here. So then we'll go to Dalton Kincaid because this is probably the one that stands out from the other ones. Now, he doesn't have the size. He's 6'4", 240. He doesn't have the size and the strength of everybody else. They definitely had him blocking in line, and it seems like that's coming back to the college game. A lot of 12 personnel that I saw. So he's in line, he's blocking, he's kind of doing the H-back motion, blocking on the edge, all that stuff. So he's definitely had experience blocking, but I think every tight end, let me just say, every tight end needs to improve their technique. There was a GM, I think. NFL always kind of have quotes for each person every year on their combine tracker. And one GM one year said that tight ends learn to block in the NFL. And I pretty much agree with him. I mean, you got guys like we'll talk about soon from Iowa and other places where they're a little bit ahead of a curve, but you don't really hone it in to the NFL. And that doesn't mean everybody becomes good, but the NFL blocking is way better for tight ends because they just have more time to focus on that technique. So I'm just going to skip saying the technique needs to improve because that goes for every single prospect. But like I said, at 240, not the strongest, but not shy. We'll get in there and really have a good motor as a blocker. And I think he could be effective, especially you want to line him up in the slot a lot and do bubbles and now routes and those type of screens. Or if you want him to chip release and all that, I think he'll be great. Now, what sets him apart is his athleticism is off the charts. For a tight end, even at 240, his athleticism is off the charts. When you talk about his explosion off the line, when you talk about his agility, when you talk about him running with the ball, when you talk about the way he runs routes, everything is up there. And I said he reminds me of Kelsey in terms of the way they play. There's playing styles. Now, obviously, the Chiefs ultimately creative with how they use Kelsey, so Kincaid wasn't on that level, but they did use him a lot of different places. He was in the slot a lot, and he did a lot of different things. So when you talk about kind of those big receivers, people talked about that with Kyle Pitts and all that and other tight ends over the years. He definitely falls into that mode, but I don't think we've seen this combination of athleticism and movement skills on a tight end. So he's the one that's different. Now you talk about the rest of the guys who are very similar. So Michael Mayer out of Notre Dame, 6'4", 265, probably the biggest body, or not the biggest body because that's Darnell Washington, but just he's the big body. And like I said, he's more Gronk than Kelsey. Now I came in thinking he was more like Kelsey just from the little I heard and saw. But yeah, no, you watch him, not super fast, not super fast at all, and not super nimble with his routes, but knows how to find the space, knows how to box people out, and be just a good outlet. Like I said, finding that space in the zone and being an easy target for the quarterback is kind of how Kelsey started to really ascend in tight ends in general. So you're talking about a possession tight end. Now they use him very interestingly, he was everywhere. And the way they use their blocking schemes, they use a lot of H-back, double H-back, a lot of pull, so a lot of power stuff. So he's got a lot of experience blocking. And I think absolutely nasty at the point of attack. Terrible technique. Terrible technique. And so he can get in the way of a block. He's definitely going to impact the person once he gets there. But after that, don't expect much. But I think, his mindset, demeanor, and motor is there. And that's the first part that you need. But I say he's above average blocker. Yak ability was average. I mean, he's a big dude. He's gonna be hard to tackle, but he's not doing too many special moves with the ball. And like I said, route running is pretty average to me. I gave him 3.5 hands. I thought that was solid. 3.5 ball skills. I don't think he has a whole lot of explosion, but in terms of a catch radius and tracking the ball, or at least concentrating and making contested catches, I think he'll be good. And then agility and speed, I gave him 2.5, but we'll see how he does in combine. Darnell Washington, interesting prospect, man. 6'7", 270. You talking about just elite of the most elite size that you ever heard of. Now, with him, he was primarily a blocker, and he blocked a lot this year as well, but he definitely was in the passing game a lot more. But natural strength, nasty demeanor, that's him. He gets after blocks. So you talk about D-back, he's knocking a D-back out. Corners, he when we seen it in college, he's throwing people 5 yards. So he can definitely tussle with the ends and linebackers and all that on the edge. Help you in a pass block. I really think he's a plus when you talk about blocking. I mean, so effective, and still a lot of room to grow with his technique. His yak ability, a lot better than you would expect. Not a lot of catches in the open field, but when he does, man, he picks up steam and he's going, and he runs he wants to truck people, and it's hard to get him. Now, he tried to hurdle a couple people, that wasn't successful, bad timing, but just to see him go up, you're like, man, okay, he really has some explosion to him. I think his routes are very average. Not fooling anybody where he's going. And his hands to me don't seem natural. They're large. The ball looks real small in his hands, so he's gonna make catches, but you see him double catch a lot. So I don't think he's natural ball catcher, but I think he'll be fine because his hands are really big. He's gonna give himself a chance. And then, like I said, ball skills 4.5. The man explosive. He's explosive. And again, not a large sample size, but you see him go up over defenders. You see him extend to make, tough catches. You see him track the ball over his shoulder. For a guy that didn't get a lot of reps as far as a pass catcher, still very impressive. And then I gave him a 3 agility and speed. So definitely going to be a guy that gets faster downhill, but he's going to be interesting. I mean, I think you would be crazy to bring him in and just have him as your second tight end that blocks. I mean, he has so much more potential than that. And with his size, most tight ends are a matchup or a mismatch. He's just a ultimate mismatch. Again, people talk about LeBron playing tight end, and he's got LeBron's size. So he'll be interesting. I do think he's going to end up going in the first round. Then we go to Sam Laporta, who I was mentioning earlier, from Iowa. Has a much stronger foundation in terms of blocking, but can get better. But every Iowa blocker, great effort, physical, strength, everything. But definitely a guy that shows up in the pass game and kind of pops. He has, I think, really good yak ability for the position. The way he runs is like he has that vision. Like he's not just running at somebody and falling over. He's looking to gain extra yards. He's looking to cut back, follow his block. So definitely rare vision for a tight end. And I think he too gains speed downhill. He's not the most explosive off the line, but once he's going in the open field, he can sprint it out faster than you probably think for someone that's 250. And as a route runner, I mean, I think it was above average. It's a little better than Mayer in Washington, but nothing too complicated. I think he has, pretty natural hands, and like I said, 3 agility and speed, pretty right there and rock solid. So you got a guy with a lot of blocking experience, solid technique, lot of size, and was very productive in the pass game as well. And then you could probably say the exact same thing about Tucker Kraft. The only thing with Tucker Kraft is he played at North or South Dakota State, so D1 AA. Didn't play a lot of big schools, so that question of competition always going to show up. I liked his ability to block. He's very physical, manhandled a lot of people, and so the question becomes, can he do that against NFL type players? But I like his foundation there. His yak ability was pretty good. I would say it's about above average. And I like this hands. He definitely his catch radius and his just natural soft hands is up there with Kincaid for me. So I really enjoyed that part. And I think his agility and speed might be a little bit better than the other guys, but we'll see when he kind of times out. But the exact same thing. He was in line almost the whole time. Very basic pro. So not really in the slot a lot or any of those things, but definitely out in the pass game. They used him a lot, and they used him a lot as a blocker. So again, you don't typically get this, and that shows you a shift in the college style, because typically you don't get a lot of tight ends with a lot of blocking experience unless they're at certain schools. But this year, again, all these guys, even though they might be more prolific pass catchers, they've all spent time on the line blocking, and that's going to bode well. And it's not just even on the line, to be honest. It's also going out in space for screens, it's chipping on the edge, all that stuff. And that works well with what the NFL style is doing now. So again, receivers, not a strong class, bit of a mixed bag. I think, to me, Johnston is clearly number one, but Rice might turn some heads. And then with the tight ends, extremely strong class. Like, I don't think you could go wrong with any of these guys. If Musgrave is healthy going forward, I don't think you could go wrong with any of these guys. So that's what we're looking at this year. Go down to the comment section. Let me know what you think. Share it around, get the conversation started. Thumbs up, subscribe, and thank you for listening.